From October 25th, 1983 to October 28th, 1983, Operation Urgent Fury is executed on the shores of the island nation of Grenada in the Caribbean. This was the code name for an invasion orchestrated by the United States for a variety of geopolitical reasons. To understand these reasons, we first need to recap the history of Grenada. The nation gained independence from Great Britain in 1974, but faced a communist coup in 1979. The new communist regime suspended the constitution and opposing political parties, while establishing connections with the Soviet Union, Cuba, and other communist governments. The leader of Grenada during this time was Maurice Bishop, and while he was collaborating with the Soviet Union, there were members of the ruling party that were even more hardline in their communist beliefs and desired further alignment with the USSR. They decided that Bishop was insufficiently revolutionary and led a new coup in 1983. Backed by the Grenadian military, they put Bishop under house arrest. He was popular with the people of the island, however, so they freed him and began marching to the Fort Rupert military headquarters to reassert his power. The Grenadian military was deployed to prevent this, leading to a firefight and over 100 casualties. Bishop was captured and executed by a firing squad following the conflict. General Hudson Austin then became the uncontested leader of the communist military state. This is when the United States would come in. President Ronald Reagan had always been concerned with the communist state being close to America, but the emergence of an even more radical government put the United States on high alert. In addition, there was tension over the massive airstrip being built in Grenada called Point SALINES International Airport, which was said to be for commercial jets, though it was widely believed that its purpose was really to transport military armaments between Cuba and communist insurgencies in Central America. The U.S. government was worried about potential animosity towards the roughly 1,000 Americans in Grenada as well. The final straw was a coalition of Caribbean nations appealing to America for intervention. In an address to the nation, Reagan explained why he agreed to their request by saying, "These small, peaceful nations needed our help. 3 of them don't have armies at all, and the others have very limited forces. The legitimacy of the request, plus my own concern for our citizens, dictated my decision. I believe our government has a responsibility to go to the aid of its citizens if their right to life and liberty is threatened." With this range of reasons in mind, Operation Urgent Fury was put into action by the United States military with help from other Caribbean nations. On October 23, 1983, an assortment of U.S. troops from all military branches deployed to Grenada from various locations by boat or air transport. Vice Admiral Joseph Metcalf led the American forces, which are designated Joint Task Force 120. The U.S. blockaded the island with various ships that would also serve to resupply the siege. In addition, America had 4 tanks and 27 fighter jets aiding the invasion. This was the first major operation conducted by the military since Vietnam, and around 7,000 soldiers were mobilized to complete the mission. They had to combat 1,300 Grenadians from the People's Revolutionary Army, along with around 800 Cuban reinforcements. Limited troops from the USSR, North Korea, East Germany, and Libya were present on the Grenadian side too. Likely supplied by the Soviets, Grenada had an assortment of anti-aircraft guns and troop transports that they utilized in their defense. The United States had a few goals they were striving to achieve to make the invasion a success. First, they wanted to secure this Point SALINES airport so that they could send in reinforcements while keeping Grenadian reinforcements out. The several hundred American medical students at St. George's University in Grenada needed to be rescued as well. While working to occupy the island and stamp out resistance, the military also wanted to capture leaders of the insurgent Grenadian government, such as Hudson Austin. These plans would be hindered by a breakdown in intelligence gathering in the days leading up to the invasion. Reconnaissance missions carried out by the Air Force and Navy were complete failures, as multiple Navy SEALs drowned while being dropped into the ocean, and many of the spy boats that were successfully dropped flooded or faced extreme weather that stopped them from gathering any useful data. As a result, troops that eventually made landfall in Grenada had to resort to using tourist maps to get a lay of the land. These troops first landed via parachute into the Point SALINES airport complex on October 25th, as the runways had been blocked off. The group of Rangers who were deployed quickly cleared the airfield with help from air support, allowing large transport planes to land. The Grenadians staged a counterattack but were quickly repelled, giving the Americans time to spread out. The soldiers faced resistance as they traveled, but they were eventually able to liberate a group of students near the airport. Simultaneously, the smaller Pearls airport was captured by Navy SEALs with less resistance. Elsewhere, a helicopter battalion landed at the Free Grenada radio station with the goal of taking over the station and spreading messages over the airwaves. Grenadian forces quickly mobilized to defend the station, though, and forced the Navy SEALs carrying out the mission to retreat into the ocean, where they had to swim for safety. Next, Army Special Forces descended onto Fort Rupert and Richmond Hill Prison. The raid on Fort Rupert was successful, as several government leaders suspected to be there were indeed captured, including Hudson Austin. However, Richmond Hill Prison, which was holding political prisoners, was very heavily fortified, and Grenadian anti-aircraft guns neutralized the planned helicopter attack. The last American military mission for the first day of the invasion was to rescue Queen Elizabeth's representative for the nation, Paul SCOON, as Grenada was still a part of the British Commonwealth. Grenadian forces allowed a Navy SEAL team to enter SCOON's residence, but proceeded to lay siege to the mansion for over a day in a well-planned trap. A Marine company had to be brought in to complete the rescue, and this company would proceed to reinforce the assault on Richmond Hill Prison. Throughout the first day of the invasion, airstrikes would be carried out to try and eliminate Grenadian heavy weapons. On day 2 of the invasion, the military had the goals of evacuating the remaining students on the island and securing additional land. These operations would be difficult because many of the American helicopters had been damaged during the previous day of fighting. An additional hindrance would be the Cuban forces that mobilized on the morning of the second day and attacked Army troops. While they did do some damage, artillery bombardment largely neutralized the Cuban threat. The United States military spread across the island throughout the day, and in the evening another campus of students was taken by troops. Organized resistance from the Grenadians was fading at this point, and many of the island's towns were seized easily, while the remaining students were found and secured. A group of Grenadian forces attempted to reorganize a new defensive effort at the Calavigny barracks near the Point Salines airport, but a U.S. attack broke up that last resistance. Now unopposed, the American forces secured the entire island, seizing weapons, arresting government leaders, and sending Cuban nationals back to their home country as they went. After all was said and done, 19 American troops were killed and 119 were injured in the invasion. Grenada had 45 dead soldiers and 337 wounded, while Cuba had 25 dead and 59 wounded. Grenada also had 24 civilian deaths and a nearly obliterated military, with almost all of its armaments seized or destroyed. Domestically, the worst popular among American citizens, people were fearful that the Grenadian government could have taken Americans hostage and a repeat of the then-recent Iran hostage crisis could have taken place. Ronald Reagan justified the intervention by saying it was a Soviet-Cuban colony, being readied as a major military bastion to export terror and undermine democracy. We got there just in time. There were some dissenters who said that no Americans were ever in danger and the war is unnecessary. 7 Democratic congressmen even unsuccessfully attempted to impeach Reagan because of the invasion. Internationally, Queen Elizabeth was upset that one of her realms had been invaded without notification beforehand. Paul SCOON had contacted the Queen before the invasion, but she claimed that she hadn't been warned that there would be any military action. Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister of the UK, came out against the invasion as well. The Soviet Union was obviously perturbed by the invasion as well, as one of the countries in its sphere of influence had been overthrown. The United Nations voted 108 to 9 that the invasion was a violation of international law. But U.S. representatives argued that the intervention was necessary to protect American citizens and keep peace in the region for the long run. With Paul SCOON giving temporary oversight as the Queen's appointed representative in Grenada, democracy was returned to the island and a new government was elected. In 2009, the Point Salines International Airport was renamed the Maurice Bishop International Airport in honor of the lost leader. Shortly beforehand, in 2008, Hudson Austin was released from prison after commutation of both his death sentence and sentence to life behind bars. The people of the island now celebrate Thanksgiving on October 25th each year to commemorate the invasion, and today Grenada as a whole is a secure nation with a lot of good things going for it. In the United States, the invasion exposed some problems with the military's communication apparatus. As proper casualty counts took a long time to gather, the locations of the endangered students were undetermined before the invasion began, and the reconnaissance before the invasion was ineffective. But it also brought some of the military's mojo back, as the invasion was an overall success and a reminder to the world of America's capabilities. To solve some of the communication problems, Congress passed the Goldwater-Nichols Act in 1986, which reworked the military command structure and made changes to the Department of Defense. America's success in Grenada also likely contributed to the ending of the Cold War just a few years later. The Soviet Union's collapse came as its people were strained by money being diverted from them to the military in order to keep up with America. By asserting its strength in Grenada, the U.S. likely pushed the Soviet Union to put its economy under increased stress. While the United States invasion of Grenada is not a particularly well-known event in American history, it did strengthen the American military, contribute to the decline of the Soviet Union, and increase American influence in the Caribbean, making it something we should all know a little more about.